Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another day text. Today is Wednesday, May 5th. We meet every weekday morning at 6 a.m. and Saturday mornings at 6 a.m. Although I may move that to 6:30, I'm not sure. It's just a little bit before the daylight actually comes up here where I am, and it changes the setting and, of course, the lighting in this particular office. But in any case, I may adjust that timing just a little, but for now we'll keep it at 6 a.m. And so that's our regular schedule. But we used to have it at 5 a.m. Then I moved it to 6 to try to accommodate different people around the earth who meet or who are joining us at different times. So good morning, Betsy. So keep that in mind. At this point, we'll stay with the 6 a.m. I might move it to just a little bit, 6:30, because it's, like I said, it's not much difference between no lighting and lighting, natural lighting, I should say. So in any case, welcome again. And what we do during these day texts is we consider a portion of the biblical record or other related texts and histories. And we're currently working our way through the letter of 2 Peter. We'll keep going through the end of Revelation according to the text that I've translated to this point, and then we will reset with Genesis. So we go through the texts, we consider various verse groupings that pertain to a specific subject or issue so that we can get the most out of the time that we spend reading them together. And so I try to group them in that way so that we get as much concentrated information about as few topics that are related to each other as possible, so we don't have too many things being discussed during these day texts, because then we wouldn't really be able to consider important subjects that come up in detail. So I try to group them. We can't always consider everything we read to the same extent, but I try to group them so that we can get the most out of each day text. So we're in 2 Peter, and we're going to be reading chapter 3, verses 11 through 13. I'll go ahead and do that. At times I may stop and make a comment, or I may just read straight through, and then we'll go back and revisit some of the text material. And then we'll make a brief application and be on our way. I will also give some updates at the end of the show about this weekend's CWJah Talk show, which is on Sunday at 8:30 a.m. All right, let's get to the text. 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 11 through 13. Excuse me, I'll go ahead and read those. As these structures, this relates to the text we read, of course, yesterday. So if you want more information, take a look at yesterday's video. So we're building from there. As these structures and human handiwork are being removed, what type of people must you be during sacred acts, like partaking of the bread and wine or just any kind of sacred act, and in living God's way? Verse 12, you are to be living in expectation and in a hurry to reach the arrival of the day of God, on account of which heavens are being burned as they are set free, and structures are being burned up as they melt. Verse 13, however, there are a new heavens and new land, according to his promise, for which we wait, in which righteousness lives. This goes all the way back to the promise that Jah made to Abraham and the city that Abraham saw in the future that would bring about God's will for the earth. The city that Abraham desired to be a part of versus the lands that he was really living in as a foreigner. It's the same with us today. We are citizens of different nations. We are a part of this world and of this earth. But we live according to a promise that we believe God made long ago, and through various humans and his own son, he has validated and shown that he is going to keep. This promise was told back in the days of Isaiah as well. So this is something humankind has been looking for really since the beginning. In Genesis, when Jah told all those present that a seed would come that would restore the earth to the condition in which he made it. And that's why we read about a new heavens and new land, which are described in greater detail in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is just sometimes difficult to understand because of various signs and symbols, but not all of it is written in that way. And a lot of it describes the new heavens and the new earth that will be established by God and the kingdom of his Son, and that will restore the earth, as I mentioned, to the condition we were originally meant to live in, only in a newer way, according to the things that Jah has done through his Son, so that now we will be like him, and the earth will be governed by those who are ruling with his Son for at least 1,000 years in our belief. We believe that's what the Bible talks about, that there will be a period, a millennium, 1,000 years, during which there will be no wickedness, no wicked influence from the devil or demons or bad humans, but that all the earth will glorify Jah, and there will be a city that will govern the earth, into which the nations will bring the glory of the earth that Jah originally made it to produce before the land was cursed. So, and the curse from to the land came in multiple ways, right? Obviously, we know that Eve was cursed with painful childbirth because of her disobedience and in listening to the serpent versus going to her husband. And we know that Cain caused a curse to come upon the land because of his murdering of his brother. So the earth is not giving its full produce. It is not yielding the bounty that Jah originally meant for us to have from it. But it will. It will, and the heavens will, and all of creation will glorify Jah, because righteousness will be the only thing there. So these are the hopes that we have. New heavens, new land, together glorifying Jah. And that's why we do these day texts, to remind ourselves of these promises and to be an expectation of the arrival of the day of God, as verse 12 says. But we don't get, there are a lot of groups that can take these kinds of texts and the day of God and the coming of the new heavens and new earth as means to become less focused. And by less focused, I mean less focused on praising Jah, and they become more concerned with self-preservation or this overriding fear that they feel coming in association with these types of events. Even if they're believers, it kind of shakes them in ways where they can't think of anything else. And that's not how we're supposed to be. We are supposed to have these things in mind and never forget them. It's what we are here for, is to praise Jah, promote Jesus, and teach the things that they taught about the coming new heavens and new earth. But if we get so caught up in this idea that it's right around the corner, it's going to happen anytime, and we can't do certain things like work to certain extents or get certain educations. Not that those things are the most valuable, they're not. But we have to survive and live in this world in ways that require us to do certain things, to be responsible in certain ways. And if we're too caught up in this idea of a future world, we're going to lose our focus on doing what we have to do now. It's not our primary focus. We're not here for this world, but we are in this world. And we have to deal with things in ways that require reason, fairness, love, and the ability to be in control of your emotions in ways that don't allow you to get overly excited about things like Armageddon or the end times. We have enough difficulty and things to have to worry about as it is. That's not a worry for us. That's just the end of this world and the beginning of the next. So really, the only kind of worry is that it's just We know it's going to be a dramatic event, and we know many or most of us, if not all of us, may have to give our lives in service to Jah before we receive life again, unless we happen to go through the Great Tribulation at a time when Jah decides these events will occur. So it's not always easy. We get anxiety. Right? Nobody wants to have to go through an eventual death or giving our life, but that's going to happen anyway, right? Even if there's no Jah, no Jesus, no nothing else, but just this accidental formation of perfectly formed creatures over time, we're still going to have to give our life, right? Because everybody dies. We know that's true from everything that's occurred before we've lived. And but it's no accident. We believe we know the reason why we die. And that's why we're doing the things that we believe we have reasons to live for. But when you don't have those kinds of beliefs, and you don't have hope in Jah or any kind of God or future, you're still going to have to give your life, right? Unless they can come up with some kind of AI simulation or cyborg type, synthetic that they download your personality into. I don't know that they'd ever be able to achieve that, but the fact is people do try, and it just goes to show again the amazing abilities that Jah gave us when he made us, but not to do those kinds of things. He is meant to give us life. He didn't make us so that we could sin and do all these bad things and then get around him by making this sort of artificial type of synthetic that we can continue to live in even if our flesh expires. It seems like what some people are trying to do. In any case, at some point, we live or die, and that is up to Jah. I mean, continue living. We're alive now, obviously, but we have to keep going and do the things we were made to do, and then it's up to Jah to decide where we end or if we continue. If we worry too much about it, we're just going to make ourselves less effective, and we'll be less helpful to other people. We'll be less effective in praising Jah because we'll be so worried about ourselves. We won't be able to give him the proper praise. So try to take away from today's texts the things that inspire hope. New heavens, new land according to his promise. And even though it talks about obviously the structures being removed and the human handiwork being destroyed, well, we all know that the things we build up on the earth, while they provide us with some benefit now, the homes and buildings and different structures can provide us with means of living and sustenance and protection, they are also used in ways that keep us from God's creation. And they've isolated us from the things that Jah actually made for us to do. And so we've replaced the way that Jah made us with our own human way, which in many ways stands in opposition to Jah. So that's why all these structures and things have to go. It's not because they don't provide any benefit. They just, for the most part, stand in opposition to Jah because they're not designed and built in ways that facilitate the way he made us to live on the earth, and they do not praise him. They're not his creation. The earth is Jah's creation. We are Jah's creation. And then we take Jah's creation and make some other things, some of which are good and useful, others are not, and hurtful. So that's why there's a new heavens and a new land coming, because the land that we have today has been corrupted or built on top of in ways that more often than not oppress humanity and do not praise Jah. So that's why we often complain about the conditions on this world, because they're not always fair. They're not correct. Even if they're partially right or they get it good sometimes, we know how this system works. We know how the rulers of the world act and what their motivation for the most part is. Self-preservation and individual or national glory. That's all they care about for the most part. There's just exceptions here and there, but that's why the Bible likens all these nations and governments to wild beasts. Even if they can maintain control for a while, it's only a matter of time before they start acting like wild animals again. So we have to be prepared protect ourselves, try to keep free from the world, but still live in the world and do what you have to do to survive, help other people, praise Jah by following Jesus. So it's not like we don't have much help. We have a lot of help. We have a lot of information, plus our own knowledge of good and bad. We're just fighting with our sinful desire that makes it difficult on all of us. So if we're all dealing with the same sinful condition and difficulty, then we should all be sympathetic and helpful to each other so that we can get through this period of judgment and into the new heavens and new land. Either way, while we're alive today, there's so much we can do until that time comes. So I encourage you to do the best you can individually to make the most out of your opportunities and circumstances, and to praise Jah wherever you can in as reasonable a manner as is possible. As you proclaim your faith in the information and evidence that we have learned, establish the truth about the history involving Jah and Jesus and all the people that they were involved with. And that's why this Sunday I'm going to start a new series on the pre-Christian evidence pointing to and identifying Jesus as the biblical Messiah, and how that evidence really could not apply to anyone else today, because the things necessary for those fulfillments are no longer here. So I encourage you all to join me this Sunday at 8:30 a.m. for that show. It'll be the first of a new series that will discuss the evidence, pre-Christian evidence, writings dated to before the birth of Jesus, like in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that talk about things only Jesus did, and things that at this point only Jesus could do. So I hope you'll join me for that, and I thank you for joining me for these day texts. We have one or two more for 2 Peter, and then we'll be concluding with that letter, moving on to the next text, and just working our way through the rest of the New Testament. So I may have a few videos that I will upload later today. I'm working on a number of different projects. I've got some secular things to do as well, though. I will be back tomorrow, Jah willing, for another day text. So I hope you all will join me then as we conclude or get close to concluding the New Testament letter of 2 Peter.